Should be good now. So you're seeing the list of directors, or my computer might be a little bit slow catching up, but you should be seeing the list of us as directors. So we have Randy Kilbasevich and Mike Penny as co-chairs. So they would be the co-chairs for the OAC. And then also within the group of directors, we have Patrick Lamb, Mike Makishuk, and Casey Wilson and Jessica Bess. And I think you're seeing most of our videos on screen right now. Everyone can give a little wave. Try not to unmute everyone at the same time. We could make for a very clumsy situation. So today we're going to cover off three main things. So the first thing is some OAC team updates. We have been expanding the list of projects that we've been working on and also expanding some of the portfolios we've been working on and activity within those portfolios, which has required some team updates. And we've also had a couple shifts in terms of some of the administrative roles within the OAC. So we'll just talk about a few of those updates. And then we have current projects that are within the OAC. So these would be more things within the structure of the OAC or the core offering to our members. And then we also have CRAG updates. So these are very specific CRAG updates pertaining to each of the cliffs across Ontario. And then I'll say lastly, but throughout we have a Q&A. So if you have questions, you should be able to hover over the bottom of your Zoom and you'll find both a chat and a QA option. If you have questions that are specific for the OAC, please drop them into the Q&A so that we can see them very easily. The chat is more like, if you want to chat with other participants or just say hello and, thanks for joining. You're welcome to do that within the chat, but the Q&A is going to be the place where we're looking for specific questions that you want answered throughout the course of this presentation. And I'm going to try and take a peek as I go. And the other board members, you can kind of nudge me if I need to take a look at some specific questions, but we will try to watch for specific Q&A inputs as we go throughout the presentation and just try to answer them as we go. We're also going to set a little bit of time at the very end to answer any questions that might not be pertaining to any of the specific CRAGs or projects that we've covered throughout. So first, and foremost, we want to say thank you so much to Jeremy Fortier. And I don't think Jeremy has actually been able to join us today, but Jeremy has been our board secretary for, I think, two or 3 years now. So much time has passed, but Jeremy has been an absolutely indispensable person to the OAC. He has kept us on track during meetings. He's kept us on track outside of meetings via email. He has really helped guide the organization and helped, keep us accountable to the projects that we have wanted to pursue and to our goals as an organization. And I think the other thing that we've appreciated about Jeremy so much is that he's always brought an incredible sense of humor and sarcasm, which I greatly appreciate. And so we just want to say thank you so much to Jeremy for his time with us. And he is moving on to do an amazing sabbatical from work and travel and climb and do a huge West Coast hike. So he's got all kinds of awesome things in his future for the year ahead, and he'll be joining us, I think, again in the very late fall or winter when he returns from his travels. And we're very excited to bring him back again, to have him back again joining us to take on a different role within the OAC. Jeremy has been an incredible secretary, but we're excited to have his voice in other aspects and have him help kind of pursue some other projects within the OAC. So I think that I would not be speaking out of turn on behalf of the board to say he'll be greatly missed. But we're excited to hopefully have him back again in the winter in a different capacity. And we hope he has the best of adventures out west. We'll be expecting regular trip reports. So thanks again very much to Jeremy for your time with us. And that means that we'll be welcoming a new board secretary, which is Jay Aurora. And Jay, I think you can see Jay on screen. Give it a wave. Yeah, woo. Jay will be joining us and has joined us over the course of the last couple of months now, I think, 1 or 2 months. as our new secretary, and we're very excited to have Jay with his wealth of experience, both in project management and as someone in the secretary role, which really can't be understated, the importance of this role. We have a board of volunteers. It's really important to have a secretary who's just, on point and keeps us in check, and we're excited to have Jay joining us. We also have new to the OAC, a new board treasurer, Matt Gleason. And Matt has already been hard at work, keeping us on track with financials and keeping things in order financially for the OAC. So we're very excited to have him join us. We also have a new newsletter writer, Keith Agnew, and Keith brings a lot of energy and exciting perspective, and we're hoping to ramp up our newsletter initiatives and provide more regular communications to our board members. And Keith is really excited about doing that. And we're excited to be, having someone who is so dedicated in that role. Previously, we had Christina join us, and she was fantastic, but she just unfortunately no longer has the capacity to take on that role. So Keith will be replacing her in that capacity, and we're excited to have him join. And I'm very excited because we have a new Niagara Glen portfolio manager, and anyone who is part of the Niagara Glen conditions page has probably already seen the update that Ali El-Nakib has joined as Niagara Glen portfolio manager. And I'm pretty sure Ali is still away in the red, so he probably hasn't been able to join today. I don't see him in our chat here, but I think he was still away in the red, actually route climbing. Shame on him, but we'll allow it. I can understand, but yeah, Ali is joining as Niagara Glen portfolio manager, and I'm specifically very excited to have him. Like, Ali has been a very significant part of the Niagara Glen in the last few years, and not just in his amazing ascents there, but also his connection to the community. And he's very professional, and I know that he's going to bring a lot to the relationship with the Niagara Parks Commission. So I'm thrilled to have him joining. So that's it for new team announcements. I don't think I've missed anyone. The board can nudge me if I have somehow overlooked someone, but I think I've got everybody there. So we'll move on to current projects. So these are items that we have on table currently within the OAC. So these are projects that, are not Craig specific, but are more about what we're offering our members, the types of, projects we have going on internally that are not specific to a particular Craig. Another great photo, by the way. So our current projects, we're currently working through our annual survey results. So we just want to say thank you so much to everyone who was able to reply with a survey submission. This annual survey, we restructured it this year to try to add more relevant questions that we felt would help us be a little bit more informed with what our community needs. Not just more broadly, but also when it comes to specific cliffs or, crags and some of the relationships that we hold with different landowners. So it's so important that people respond, because it gives us the chance to understand what you want from us as a community and what things are important to you. So we got a ton of submissions this year. I think Pat can nod or shake his head, but I think we got more submissions than last year even. And we got a lot of responses to these new questions that we feel are just really going to be quite valuable when it comes to land negotiations or climbing access negotiations with different landowners. So we're pretty thrilled about that. And we've kept some of the root questions that we feel help us gain a perspective year over year. So we're feeling good about that, but we do have an analyst who's working on that right now, and is working through providing a summary of results. And, we know it's been a little while, but we have had some trouble finding the right people to be in place to do that analysis and provide a summary for us. But we do have people now, and we're working through that. So I think we can expect in the next month or so, we'll probably see a final version of some survey results. Oh yeah. Okay. So this is awesome. We were 408 full survey results this year versus 368 in 2019. So I think that's fantastic. Um, we're also working on an update to our membership structure. So time and time again, we hear from our members that we want to be able to support the OAC in a more significant way. And so we've been noodling for a very long time for the last few years about how we can provide a tiered membership offering, or a way for members to give more as they have said they have wanted to, but also providing value add back. So Jessica has been taking the lead on that and doing an incredible job with a ton of outreach to different partners, and built a lot of exciting collaborations with some really great brands and some of the climbing gyms across Ontario in order to provide a tiered membership offering or an annual supporter program. So we have this $5 lifetime membership, but many people have said, I want to do more. What can I do? And this annual supporter program is going to give people a chance to give more back to the climbing community and, through the OAC, by having an annual supporting tier that is not just a one-time offering. But the nice thing about that is that in return, we're offering things like discounts to some of your great climbing brands that you love and some of the gyms that that you visit. And so it gives people a chance just to have a bit more of reward benefit for greater support of the OAC. So we're excited to be releasing that soon. We also have a significant OAC website update in the works, and we need to do a theme upgrade and content upgrade. So we're actually in the midst of seeking a WordPress developer, a WordPress wizard. So if you are someone or you know someone who's interested in a role as a WordPress, wizard of sorts, we would be very interested to speak with you. So please shoot us a line at info@ if you're intrigued, and we would love to have that discussion, because our website hasn't been updated in some time, and I think we've got some work to do there just to rearrange things a little bit based on what the community needs from us, but also what some of our partners need from us. So our supporters, when it comes to this annual supporter program, our newsletter, and our gym partners, and also landowners and land managers. So again, if you know someone who's a WordPress developer, or you're interested in getting involved, please do reach out. We'd love to hear from you. The last internal project we've been working on is an August climber meetup. So I know a lot of people have asked about the Beaver Valley Climbing Festival. And unfortunately, we just, with everything with COVID, and I know we're in a bit more of a stable place now, but like the planning for that basically needed to happen last year in order to make it happen. So we're a bit, we're a bit behind on that if we were to try and do it, but it just wasn't possible to secure the dates and the vendors that we needed and the partners we needed to make that happen. So what we have been considering is an August climber meetup, and we're going through the works of sorting out what it would take to organize something like that. But what we are thinking is some kind of like day event where everyone can come in, grab a burger, veggie burger, hot dog, veggie dog, whatever, and be able to just hang out and say hi and maybe have a little libation or two, and and hang out and just reconnect with the community, because it's just been so long. And I think we're all feeling the exhaustion, I think, of the last few years with the COVID-19 pandemic and Omicron and Delta and whatever other versions we've had. So I think we're all feeling it a bit and feeling ready to reconnect again, especially in an outdoor setting where it feels, low risk, I think, mostly to a lot of people. So we would love to be able to do that. So if you're excited about the idea of a meetup, please comment in the chat. express your interest, because we're trying to gauge whether or not people would be intrigued, or if it feels like it's too early to do that, or if we should hold off for another year. So if it's something that seems interesting to you, definitely let us know. And we would love to consider organizing something like that. So it's been on the table. We've been kind of thinking about what it would take, and how much setup we would need, and what kind of venue we would need. We've been considering something in the Beaver Valley, since it's such a popular area, but we would also probably be open to considering Halton as well. So if you're interested, please let us know in the chat. Just give us a little, yeah, I'm into it. Okay, with that, I'm going to move on to Craig's specific updates. And I guess I'll just give it a quick second for any board members to raise their hand. Does anyone need to cover off anything else within OAC projects? I see no raised hands. Okay, I'm going to continue on. So we are at the Craig specific updates now, which I'm sure is the part that everyone is most interested to hear about. And again, if you're just joining us, thank you again for popping on. I think we've got some pretty important updates for a few of the Craigs across Ontario. That I'm sure everyone will be interested in. Again, this meeting is being recorded, so you're able to log back on at a later date and just check out any updates that you might have missed if you have to sign off. But you're also welcome to pop into our Q&A as well as our chat, and just ask any questions that you might have. If you have a specific question, please again ask that in the Q&A so that we can see it. It's a little easier for us to keep track of questions in the Q&A. So as far as Craig's specific updates are concerned, we did have a few questions come in about Conservation Halton and whether or not bookings would continue beyond the course of the pandemic. So Conservation Halton has found that they still see a very high level of visitation in their parks. And so they are maintaining bookings. They're not going away at this time. However, they have kind of said, with a wink, that like double bookings are acceptable. So they are 2-hour time slots for bookings, which obviously doesn't allow a ton of time if you're trying to have a full day of climbing at the cliff, but they do allow double bookings. And I think in 4 hours, you could probably climb out a lot of rattlesnake and other areas, but yeah, so that's not changing. If you have any questions, you can let us know. I know Mike Makashuk and Randy are both very connected to Conservation Halton, so they'll be able to answer any questions when it comes to those cliffs. For the turtle, we introduced a reservation system, I think a year ago now, thanks to Pat and his good work on the tech side. So we have a reservation system for the turtle, and that was something that we did in order to help the landowner. It is a private landowner, so a private homeowner that does own the turtle. And they asked for a bit of support just to manage the overcrowding and the noise levels and whatnot. And the reservation system has proven to be quite effective. So, we're really happy to see the results of that reservation system in play. And we've seen lots of questions come through about the system and lots of bookings. It gets booked up very quickly. So I think it's a pretty popular area, which is awesome because it does allow for, people to have a quick visit at a cliff with some moderate climbing where, you're able to get a lot done in a day. And, the reservation system has helped minimize that overcrowding. So, you're not necessarily having to wait in line for a route, which is fantastic. The system has a 12-person reservation limit per day, and each person does need to register separately. So you can't register a full group. You need to go in and register as individuals. Pat, maybe you can just mention in the chat when you want, because I don't recall from our discussions, but if you need to make a cancellation, can you do that within the system, or do you need to actually write info at and make that request? So I'm going to keep an eye in the chat, and I will answer that question a little bit later.
Maybe I'll just unmute myself.
Oh,
and
sure.
Say, you get an email when you reserve, and you can you can click the link in that email to cancel your reservation if you need to cancel.
Awesome. Awesome. If anyone has any questions about that system, let us know. Again, you can pop anything in the Q&A or the chat just to raise any questions that you might have about how that functionality works. But it has served us very well. And I think it's been a really good way for us to manage the relationship with the landowner. And I think the landowner is quite happy with how things have been going since that reservation system has been employed. We haven't heard any complaints about noise or dogs or bathroom usage in the area. So I think it's been working very well. So I just want to say again, like on behalf of everyone with the OAC and on behalf of the climbing community, thanks to everyone who has made a booking when you've gone there. And it is an honor system, as you all know, and so it's just been very it's been very reassuring to see that the climbing community has embraced that system and it's working exactly as we had hoped that it would work. So that's fantastic. I think, Randy, you're potentially on the line, and I'm not sure who else this would pertain to. I know Dustin's not here today, so our ice climbers are a fragmented group today, but Hamilton Conservation Authority ice climbing. So we just wanted to briefly mention this, and I know we're well out of season for ice climbing now, but over the course of the winter, it did come up a few times where people had questions like, we know ice climbing is happening in Hamilton Conservation Authority cliffs, but it seems to be reserved for guides, which it is. Like, that is how Hamilton Conservation Authority has defined their climbing access guidelines. But it's probably a shot in the dark, but it might be worth having a team of volunteers try to take on that portfolio and attempt to open discussions regarding more public access to climbing. So I don't know if, Randy, if you're on the line, if you want to shed some light on that, or you want to add anything to what I've said already, but
whoops, I am on the line. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. So, I mean, really, it does come down to bandwidth. And the reality is we don't have a portfolio manager for that project. Obviously, the OAC feels that we should have access for the greater climbing community. And as you pointed out, as it stands right now, unfortunately, the decision by Conservation Authority is to limit it to the ACC and I believe OAC and perhaps one other guiding group. So I guess really comes down to a call going out for a volunteer to step forward who has passion and the ability to address that situation. And I think we can definitely potentially move the needle. We just need someone to do it.
Yeah, Randy, someone asked in the chat, are we coordinating with the ACC on this? And I admittedly don't know the answer to that.
So in the past, yeah, we have discussed with the OAC. So, I mean, the OAC typically has a representative sit in on board meetings. So that topic has come up. The big difference between the OAC as an organization and the ACC is the ACC has, they are an insured organization, and as well as a guiding group, obviously. So OAC would have their own insurance, which would then cover liability as an issue. The OAC, as it stands right now, does not offer any form of insurance. Were we to go down that road, it would be more of an FQME model, and that's a separate discussion. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I would encourage people to go ahead and research that. It is a much more involved conversation, but it certainly is a conversation that could be had. But again, it comes down to someone, we need someone to step forward.
Yeah, we do. And I mean, as you said, Randy, we do have ACC participants, like, our liaison between the ACC and the OAC. So the Toronto chapter of the ACC, John Vallone is our contact with the ACC who communicates with the OAC regularly. So any collaboration between the ACC and the OAC would be facilitated through John, and also Charles Dobson. So Charles is also involved in the ACC, and we do have regular communication. But as you said, Randy, we need someone who's excited about the portfolio, excited about ice climbing in Hamilton, and wants to pursue this, as a potential a potential avenue for allowing more public usage of Hamilton Conservation Authority parks to ice climb. So, and it could be difficult to be honest. It could be difficult because we know that the Hamilton Conservation Authority is not necessarily super keen to open it up to a larger group of people, but we don't really know why that is. So I think we've got a little bit of work to do to figure that out. And if there was someone who was really keen, they could kind of start those conversations up and get a better understanding of what the HCA is thinking and how we might be able to address some other issues.
Casey, could I just also clarify that Hamilton Conservation is separate from Conservation Halton, so that may confuse people.
Yeah.
Fantastic relationship with the one. We admittedly don't have a fantastic relationship with the other.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's worth mentioning too that it hasn't been an area of interest for the most part in the past. It hasn't been something where we've had a lot of people raise their hand and say, hey, what about Hamilton Conservation Authority ice climbing? But we have heard a little bit about that in the recent years. So if someone is keen and they're excited to take it on, please reach out. We would love to hear from you and potentially try to pursue that. So that's all I'll say about that. The Rockwood Cliff. So sorry, I'm just catching up on a QA from a question from Janie. Can the OAC and the ACC be a joint venture to incorporate insurance? Yeah, I mean, currently the OAC does not provide insurance on behalf of rock climbers. Like that is a much larger conversation and a more complex issue with regard to the Ontario Liability Act, or so the Ontario Landowners Liability Act. I personally don't know the answer to that question right now, but we could certainly consider it. I think insurance is often the last issue that comes up for these people. Liability is the issue when it comes to actual accidents, and like insurance doesn't protect you against litigation. So that's often the distinction that we're dealing with. So, Janie, I don't know the answer to your question off the top of my head, but if anyone else wants to pop in as a board member or otherwise and mention something, you're welcome to, but it's something we would have to look into. More broadly, insurance and insurance on behalf of rock climbers in Ontario, it has not necessarily satisfied the concern of landowners. And we've seen that actually with Rockwood. So we can talk a little bit more about that as we get into this, but it has not satisfied the concerns because, again, insurance does not prevent litigation. So someone can still attempt to sue you even if you have insurance. And sometimes it can even lead to people wanting to sue you more because you have insurance. So it can be a challenge. So I'm not sure. I think this is a question we would have to kind of bring to the people who have more legal knowledge on the OAC team and determine, what kind of options we would have. Okay, so I'll move on to Rockwood and provide an update here. So last year, in fact, actually almost 2 years ago now, the OAC tried to renew conversations with the GRCA, so the Grand River Conservation Authority, who is the landowner for Rockwood and a variety of other parks within their management. And we had asked them about, reignited the conversation, I suppose, about considering climbing within Rockwood. And we had, I think, 2 or 3 different calls with the GRCA team. And we had proposed providing a climbing management plan, an updated climbing management plan, because in the past we have done such and unfortunately it was rejected. And we attempted to do attempted another pass at negotiations with the GRCA team, and they have completely firmly declined requests to consider climbing in their management plan. And they at one point said, well, what's in it for us, and how could we well, basically, yeah, they just said, what's in it for us? Why would we do this? There's no reason for us to consider adding climbing. It's just another activity we would have to manage. And we already have tons of liability issues when it comes to swimming in our parks.
Casey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's worth repeating, or at least revealing, that they were essentially open in the beginning to the idea of having the conversation.
Yeah.
We had the opportunity to meet with Chris White, who sits on the board of the GRCA, which is a 26-member board. And Chris, as well as the CAO of the GRCA, whose name escapes me at the moment, they were initially open to the idea of at least having the discussion. And I think over the course of our discussions with them, it became, at least this is my view, it became obvious that they were not really interested whatsoever, because they threw down a gauntlet of things that might be possibilities, and we fervently, went down and tried to chase these things down. So if you recall, the initial thought was perhaps we could lease the land to mitigate some of the liability issues that were thrown in our direction. We worked internally with the GRCA to try to see how feasible that was. And when we got down that path, we were just told, no, sorry, we weren't actually not interested in doing that. So unfortunately, I think the desire on behalf of the GRCA to open up another activity, i.e. rock climbing, is just not there. And I would encourage you that anyone who's on this call, if you are living within the Tri-City area, Guelph, Kitchener-Waterloo, if you have interest in opening up climbing there, I would encourage you to look up the board of the GRCA. You may find that one of those board members is in fact your MP or a local politician. And if that's the case, I would encourage you to reach out to them. We have some folks within the OAC that live in that area and did reach out to those folks. And we found that they were more willing to lend us an ear if we were constituents within their area. So I think this is a long, a long process, and I have hope that one day we will be able to legally climb within Rockwood, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's much of an appetite there on behalf of the GRCA, both within the staff as well as on the board. So
yeah, I mean, I feel in our discussions that we provided several options to them in terms of how this could be done, with a climbing management plan, a pay-per-use situation, a land lease, and every single option was rejected. So I think it just comes down to a matter of desire, as you said, Mike, and they just don't have the desire to add a new activity there. So it's unfortunate and it's confusing, frankly, to use liability issues with swimming versus liability issues with climbing, where climbing has been occurring in Rockwood in a non-managed way, I suppose, for many years, but there have never been issues with, safety or anything with climbers there, yet they have continuous issues with swimmers. It's confusing to pair those, to understand the logic. Yeah, it's very difficult to understand the logic, to understand how they can justify that. But we're not the landowners and we don't get to decide. We do our best to make an argument in favor of climbers, and I think climbers have done a really good job of making an argument for themselves by being safe, not having a low impact and by not having safety issues come up all the time. But it's just unfortunate that, this is just not turned out in our favor here. And I don't think until there is a massive changeover, not only in the people on the board who are decision makers, but also in the thought process and the perceptions of the board members, I don't think we're going to see a change. And I think broadly, climbers know this kind of anti-climbing sentiment is something that we have seen come up time and time again across Ontario specifically. And I just, until we see a shift in the mentality towards rock climbing, it's going to take time before we're able to make, to make changes there. And so
sorry, one more thing, Casey.
Yeah,
The other thing to consider in the spirit of transparency, I think it's worth noting that the discovery of Rockwood was actually, it occurred because members of the GRCA contacted a climbing gym and had a desire to set up top ropes for day camps. So there was an appetite at one time. Unfortunately, there isn't anymore. So I just wanted to get that out there.
Yeah. And, Janie, you mentioned public influence in one of your questions, and that's certainly something within the OAC strategy that we have considered in terms of steps to move through. And, we're hesitant to pursue public influence because we wanted to have discussions in good faith with the GRCA, but we're just meeting so much resistance from the GRCA that we're just not seeing it's going to be possible to sway their feelings about climbing internally. So it may be that we need to pursue public influence, and it might be that we need to look at something more like an external media campaign. And frankly, I think that's something that's going to benefit us likely in a lot of different areas, because we're having some of the same resistance come up, not just from, municipalities, or government, but also from private landowners at places like Campton, or sorry, not Campton, but Cowcraig, DG, Rockwood, etc. So I think in general, we should be considering a general push in terms of media and influence in order to sway perceptions of rock climbers, because, as you said, Janie, I'm just reviewing your comments, swimming is considered a traditional activity, and it's easy to understand because everybody, for the most part, grows up swimming or has access, or at some point has accessed water in their lives. And so swimming is easy to understand, where climbing is just so difficult for so many people to understand that it's easy to write off as being high risk and dangerous without understanding the mentality of actually how climbers think about safety, and also the equipment that we use in order to remain safe while we do this activity that we love so much. So, there's definitely a reconsideration of the strategy that we've taken with Rockwood, and how that also influences what we do with other regions or other cliffs, and how we try to influence decision makers, whether that's from an internal relationship building or externally. So okay, so yeah, like with regard to Rockwood, I mean, I think we will certainly consider what an external campaign might look like to influence people from the outside in, but I honestly, at this point, I mean, I don't know how other people feel within the board or within the group, but my feeling is at this point, there is probably nothing that would sway the decision makers within the GRCA at this point. And so I think we've got a long road ahead of us to consider how we may approach them, but I just don't know that we have a quick answer on that or a quick solution on that. This has been a decades-long portfolio that the OAC has been trying to pursue, and we have stayed at it despite being, rejected time and time again. So Mike Duty, I see that you're raising your hand. If you can throw your question in the Q&A, we'll take a look at that, or even throw your comments in the chat if you'd like, and we will try to get to your question there. For Campton, so I'm gonna move on, but we are just working on the next meeting, which is either on it's on the 15th, I think, with the NPCA. So that's the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. Just an important note for the boulders in the group, that is a different authority or landowner than the Niagara Glen. The Niagara Glen is the Niagara Parks Commission, so that's the NPC. very easily confused with the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. So we're working with the NPC on Campton, continued talks with them, and they're very open to having rock climbing be a sanctioned activity within their parks. Dustin Jewel Johnson has done an incredible job of maintaining a relationship. Also, Mike Makashuk, working with their team to help support their species habitat study. And Dustin will be going out to meet with them again on the 15th, and they will be sharing, or the NPCA will be sharing their updated proposed management plan at that time. So it's pretty exciting. I feel like we're getting closer and closer. And, you know, I know a lot of people are very eager, and it takes, you know, some patience definitely to get through some of these things, but you know, I think we're definitely making progress there, and I'm certainly thrilled to see that the NPCA is excited about working with climbers. I know that they've looked to the Niagara Parks Commission to see what their experience is like. I know they've been in touch also with Halton, and they're just hearing great things about the climbing community, which doesn't surprise me at all. And so I think we'll see some more significant updates from them probably in the coming year. So be patient. It's going to take time, but we are getting there slowly. So Cow Crag. So Cow Crag, you know, this has become a much more popular area, this region of climbing. And parking has been a continuous issue because it's so limited at the end of Dublin Line. And, you know, it can be very busy down there. And I know that it has caused a bit of frustration from a landowner, a homeowner in the area. But, you know, I think climbers just need to understand, if you continue to park with all tires off the gravel, you will not get a ticket. You are safe to park there. The end of Dublin Line does have a Bruce Trail road allowance, and you are absolutely within your legal rights to be able to access Cow Crag through that road allowance. Just do not use the short trail left turn cutoff, which I think is actually largely grown over at this point, potentially. So just continue to do the Stairmaster hike straight up the cliff or straight up the hill. And then you're able to access the down climb into Cow Crag from there. The OAC has had contact with the homeowner who is feeling that they have ownership of the land, the cliff and the trail into Cow Crag, but OAC findings reinforce that the land ownership or property boundaries just do not support that claim. So more to come on that. There's more detailed understandings that we will be gaining of the land ownership and property boundaries, but there is nothing to support that is private land. So we will just ask climbers to continue to stay on the road allowance, which you can kind of clearly tell is a road allowance because there's a very sort of sparse forest to the left, or forest trail that goes to the left of that path as you're hiking up the Stairmaster Hill.
There's no old growth.
Yeah, there's no old growth there. So it's pretty clear that it was at some point clear cut and has only seen rejuvenation in recent years, possibly the last 5 to 10 years. So I think, if you are encountering a homeowner, you should just continue to say, I'm using the Bruce Trail road allowance. I am hiking to the top of this cliff and, I'm not here to make trouble.
And
I'm not interested in trespassing. Have a nice time. And you are totally legally able to park with all tires off gravel at the end of Dublin Line. What I will say is be very cautious getting in and out of your car, because I have personally been there and seen people absolutely ripping it out of certain parking lots within the area. So I would be very careful to keep your personal items off the road, keep yourself off the road, get in and out of your car as quickly as you safely can. And yeah, do not get in the way of any vehicles that may or may not be obeying speed limits in the area. And that's all I'll say about that. Is there anything anyone else wanted to add? Okay. Yeah, Janie, I've called both golf courses, and I actually did call Granite Ridge and I forget the one at the end of the street there, but I did call both with regards to parking to ask if they would be open to having parking, overflow parking for people, for climbers specifically, OAC members who were using the the road allowance. And they said that unfortunately they wouldn't be able to pursue that because they have limited parking already. And on their busiest days, they're already quite full. And, unfortunately, a good day golfing is also kind of a good day for rock climbing. So we would be needing that overflow at the time when they were most busy. So it's just not an option. You can certainly park, less earlier on Dublin line, but you'll be in for a little bit of a hike. But just pay attention to any of the parking signs that are in the area if it is busy, and try to carpool as much as possible. I mean, I know sometimes it's difficult to do that if you're meeting up with a friend who's from a different region or from a different city, but try to carpool as much as possible. You could potentially even carpool to, like, I don't know, a Walmart parking lot, and then, or meet up in a Walmart parking lot and park together at the end of Dublin line in one car instead of two. So it could just help that. Okay, what else will I say? We'll move on to Ontario Parks. Mike Penny, I'm gonna let you jump in on that, and Randy, if you've got anything to add as well. So we do have ongoing discussions with Ontario Parks. We're in the very early stages of discussing what any sort of relationship might look like between Ontario Parks and the OAC. We obviously, and with the very significant work done by the ACC, have a climbing relationship built with Bon Echo, which is an Ontario park. But there are other regions where climbing is not an illegal activity, but is a non-sanctioned activity, or a tolerated activity. So we're just looking at what the future might hold in terms of broader discussions about how that could evolve. So Mike, Penny, and Randy, if you'd like to jump in.
Sure. So, yeah, as you've mentioned, Casey, we have over the last year begun to develop a relationship with Ontario Parks. I have to say that it has been a very positive relationship over the last year, and I think that it's fair to say that Ontario Parks is aware of climbing activity within the boundaries of their parks. And is also, aware that climbing does not fall neatly within the boundaries of a recreational management plan. So I'm not the lawyer in the group here, but there is certainly an increasing number of people like us that are choosing to recreate as climbers, and I don't see, and many of us don't see, that choice going away with the popularity of climbing increasing. So I think, our pitch initially to get involved with Ontario Parks was, of course, that we have a desire to, recreate on public lands. And it happens to be that many of the great places to climb are within Ontario Parks. And so, we have a precedent at Bon Echo where climbing has been allowed, has been grandfathered or grandmothered in, and we have a wonderful relationship or history or track record as a community enjoying Bon Echo. So we have opened a dialogue with Ontario Parks. We have used that dialogue to try to sort of plug the holes that exist from a policy perspective. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but there is provisions within the policy that provide certain powers to park superintendents to allow activities or to disallow activities. So, our focus is on being a subject matter expert to Ontario Parks. you know, we're very thankful that we have a seat at the table, so to speak, to represent climbers and to try to deal with any concerns that might, you know, come about, whether it be from local homeowners, whether it be from the park's perspective in terms of trying to better understand climbing and the safety aspects, and just have a, you know, have an open dialogue with Ontario Parks. As far as the relationship goes, you know, like I said, we are the subject matter experts, and they have treated us as such. It's really just an opportunity for them to consult with us and to hopefully, you know, provide a better experience for all park users, not just climbers. So I don't know, Randy, do you have anything else you want to add on to that? Have we lost Randy?
I don't know.
Okay.
All right, no, I'm here.
Okay.
No, actually, I don't. I mean, Mike's been running a point on this, and I think he's pretty much hit everything on the head. The only thing I would emphasize is that there certainly is a willingness to work with us, which is a nice change.
Yeah.
Certainly wasn't the case in the past, so that's excellent.
Yeah, I think, you know, in addition to Mike and Randy, we very much have to thank John Balone and Garrett Hudson for their support in those conversations. You know, I think there's a lot of intricacies that go into those conversations, and John and Garrett are able to, you know, add a lot of context and expertise to that as well. So we thank them greatly for their help. Okay, for Devil's Glen, so, you know, this is connected to Ontario Parks. It is within Devil's Glen Provincial Park is an Ontario park, and it continues to be, you know, climbing continues to be recognized as a tolerated activity there, and I'm sure everyone is wondering about the latest status with regards to the nearby homeowner concerns, but we can reassure everyone that Ontario Parks has not changed their approach when it comes to Devil's Glen. Devil's Glen climbing continues to be tolerated. Climbing has happened in Devil's Glen Provincial Park since well before it became a provincial park. Climbing's been a tolerated activity there, and it has been something that's been going on, I think, dating back as far as the 70s. So, you know, nothing has changed there. And it is important for us to reinforce that anti-climbing, you know, sentiment does not change the Ontario Parks position on climbing there. So climbers should not feel that they need to change their habits or avoid Devil's Glen because a local homeowner is not tolerant of climbing in the provincial public park. The only change that climbers need to be aware of is that parking on concession 10 is going to change a little bit. So there was a concern raised by a farmer. It was not a safety concern, despite what you might have read in a local news outlet in the area. It was actually only a concern about getting farming equipment past parked cars. And so working with town council, we were able to establish that they would recommend we only park on the west side, and we park 30 meters from the intersection of 124. So that gives the farmer who had the concerns about getting past with their large equipment, it gives them space to maneuver around any parked vehicles, and ensures that they're able to kind of navigate the corner safely without any concerns about, not being able to get by. So there have never been any incidents that we are aware of in terms of safety or accidents or anything with regard to people parking on concession 10, exiting or entering concession 10. So we've never heard anything as such. It has only been a matter of being able to get by with farm equipment. And so we have addressed that by working with town council, and they will be installing new no parking signs on the east side, and the first 30 or 50, it might be 50, but I think it's 30 meters from the 124 intersection. So Councillor Doug McKechnie was able to provide me with some updates on that and confirm that the bylaw was passed, so they will be installing new signage there. So even though the signage isn't there right now, at least not as this exact moment that I know of, we would just ask that climbers start preemptively changing their parking habits and just park on the west side, stay well away from the intersection. It's a little bit of a longer couple steps up the hill, or down the hill, but it's really, it doesn't really change that much. So that's the only significant change there. The only other thing we have said, which you've probably seen in our Facebook updates and Instagram updates and whatnot, is that we do have a local homeowner who is vandalizing bolts in Devil's Glen. It's very clear
Hold on,
that
hold on. We don't know. We don't have evidence. Unfortunately, we don't have evidence that can directly implicate someone. So let's.
No, but we are aware that is a person who has been approaching Devil's Glen on foot. We know that they've brought a ladder in, and we know that they've been there during off hours and oftentimes during the late evening, potentially the early morning. So we do know that it is a person who's been there on foot, because we have had climbers who have been there immediately before and after something has occurred, and another vehicle was not seen that was not a known vehicle. So we do know that it is someone, visiting the area on foot. So I am, making a leap. It's a homeowner. You can blame me, Casey Wilson, specifically for that presumption, but I'm not going to pretend that it's not someone local, or at least someone who's hiding in the forest, or something similar.
Yeah, yes. So I think we need to be careful not to point fingers, but there is a saying that if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So surely there is a lot of circumstantial evidence that points in one direction. We have also been dealing over the last year with very two specific people that have been very vocal and have chosen to harass climbers directly. And we have been in contact with as many people as possible that have reported very similar stories of being harassed or
demanded to know where they parked or
Correct.
what they
Their
were
full
doing
names.
within the park.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
And we have
And-
heard that same name come up through the OPP, Town Council, and Ontario Parks.
Yes. And so I think the important thing here is we are aware of what's going on. We have been seeing an escalating pattern that is very troubling. And we have been in communication with the OPP, the Clearview Council members, a few council members, who have actually in some cases participated in sort of keeping an eye on the area, which is great to see. And we've been in contact quite regularly with Ontario Parks. And so I will say this publicly because I think it's worth saying that this activity is not going to stop climbers. And I think it's important for all of us to continue to enjoy this public park and enjoy the public space and not be deterred by the actions of, a handful or one party. We don't know for sure, but I think it's important for us to all exercise our rights as people to go out and enjoy public lands and to do it in a way that's safe and practices leave no trace. And I have to say that I'm very proud of the community over the last year on how we have responded as a group and how well kept that park really is. So I will say that. I will also say that if you have any interactions with folks that seem weird, if you see anything that's out of sorts, please don't feel hesitant to contact one of us or to write the OAC on our website. Give us a rundown of what you've experienced or seen. Mm-hmm. Everything helps. We are doing our best to collect data, to collect evidence, and we will do everything in our power to hold these folks accountable to what I feel and what we feel is a pattern of escalation that is very dangerous.
Yeah, and Ontario Parks, and the OPP, as well as Town Council, are very well aware of the mischief that has been going on in the park, and the harassment that climbers have faced. And as far as I understand, the Ontario Parks have indicated that climbing is a historically tolerated activity in the park. And the comment that I received from the OPP specifically was, I don't see what the big deal is. It's not like you guys are down there partying. You're enjoying nature responsibly. What's the issue? And I do have to say thank you to all of the climbers, and I think some non-climbers, who wrote not only the Lion's Head local paper, but also the local Clearview Township area paper, to express their support for climbers and to, combat the misconceptions and frankly, some of the lies that were spread through the articles submitted by anti-climbing parties. So I will say thank you to everyone for their support there.
I see a number of questions from Janie here. So Janie, I'm just going to try to answer a couple of these. We have made our best efforts to try to keep our behavior above the line. And in many cases, in the early stages of this process, have chosen not to mention names as we've been reporting what we have seen at Devil's Glen, and not report our assumptions, to try to gather information from those folks that we have reported this information to. And so we have learned that there is a party that has written, to the Creemore Echo, and there's an article that was published by the Creemore Echo, and that same party, Adam and Holly Pierce, have also written letters to the Southern Bruce Peninsula or the Peninsula Press. So I think I have considered whether to use their names, but I think at this point they have made themselves well known as
anti-climbing parties.
Yes. And so the other thing I want to mention, Janie, is that we don't know what Ontario Parks has said to them. And frankly, yes, it's of interest to us, but I don't know what Ontario Parks has said to them. They have been, they've kept their cards relatively close to their chest. I can say that they are very interested in continuing to gather their own evidence and
Correct,
are very
yeah.
interested in trying to resolve this issue and hold the parties accountable.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing I will say, because I think, in the past we have been accused of not sharing all the information we know, there is also a personal connection between the author of the article at the Creemore Echo and the Pierces themselves, a work connection. So, I again want to go back to Casey's point and say thank you to everyone who wrote an article or wrote some feedback to the Creemore Echo, as well as the Peninsula Press, and expressed, your own views about climbing and how, it may have been misrepresented.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all I have to say. I don't think we need to, labor the issue.
Yeah. So I think, the only thing people need to keep in mind is just, if you're approached by someone who is questioning what you're doing in the park, you are not obligated to answer anybody unless they are someone with OPP, Ontario Parks, that's it, really. Those are the only people that you really need to answer to, or the MNR, so the Ministry of Natural Resources. Aside from that, you are not obligated to speak to anyone who approaches you in the park, and I would recommend that you do not do so, in fact. And I would also say, be very careful of your personal belongings. Someone did have a backpack stolen and relocated within the park. They were thankfully able to recover it, and it did have their keys in it. And this, was a very concerning escalation. So I would be very mindful of it, of your personal belongings, because I would just say whoever is perpetrating these activities doesn't seem to have any, I don't know, level of concern for interacting with others' belongings or whatnot. So I would be mindful of your personal belongings. Don't leave anything out of sight. And also, as you've probably mostly all seen, We have seen that bolts have been vandalized and been removed on a lot of routes, on the first and second bolts of many routes. It's clearly where there is a place to place a ladder. So it is, not something that's likely been done by a rock climber. It is clearly someone who is, probably an anti-climbing type of person. And so we would just say, bring a really long stick clip. So yeah, it's something to be mindful of, certainly. The only other piece on Devil's Glen is that we are exploring alternative parking options for the long-term future. So we've just been kind of perusing the area and what's available just to see if there are any longer-term options. We don't want to end up in a situation where, we're limited on concession 10s. So, we've definitely been pursuing other options, and that's a great segue into Metcalfe because we've been doing the same thing there. But before I mention that, I will say that Mike Makashuk has had the extremely glamorous job of securing porta potties at Metcalfe for the 2022 and 23 season. So thank you very much, Mike, for doing that work. I know it's a bit of administrative work, and it is shockingly difficult to track down porta potties, but we have managed to do it. So there will be porta potties at Metcalfe. If you see any significant issues with them, you can always write us and let us know, but they should be mostly in good working order. And we are still pursuing a parking lot expansion there. However, I will say the Bruce Trail Conservancy, once upon a time, was trying to obtain or was trying to expand the parking lot for Metcalfe, but for some reason they had abandoned the project. But they may be reigniting that project again. So while we were kind of pursuing the potential of doing this with the M&R, and they were very open to the idea, the Bruce Trail had already done quite a bit of work on that front. And so we're just waiting to find out if they're going to continue pursuing that project and if we can support it in some way, or if we as the OAC need to pursue that on our own. So the M&R is very open to the possibility. They're actually more than happy to have expanded parking there. So I think that's something that we'll see in the future. It might, again, like these things take time. And I know sometimes it can feel like, you guys mentioned parking lots ages ago, what's going on? It can take time, but it is a slow rolling process to go through approvals and planning. And, you do have to submit I learned quite a lot of documents in order to get a parking lot expansion done. But it is something that we're pursuing and well aware that is sorely needed at Metcalfe, especially. I've personally waited in line for a parking spot there for longer than I would have liked to. Okay, so almost two. I think we have like maybe one more slide after this. But we'll try to be speedy because I know we're getting close to the end of our scheduled time today. Is just Lions Head. So paid parking is now in effect for the season of May 15th to October 15th. You do still require online reservations for McCurdy. One significant change, there is no parking at the school this year due to renovations. So unfortunately, that means you do need to park at the arena or at the, what did I say? There was another location, the arena or.
So sorry, I was just typing a response to Jonathan's question here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be a short response. So the parking changes for Lions Head it's paid parking is in effect as of May 15th. I can't see the thing because of all the windows I have open here. So May 15th through until the mid of October, online reservation is required for McCurdy parking. So McCurdy is the main parking area for the Bruce Trail. The Bruce Trail has been, in case no one heard from last year, has been rerouted. So it's actually, 15 minutes longer, 10 minutes longer from McCurdy to get to the lookout now. So your primary parking choices are McCurdy parking. You can't just show up, you need a reservation. And it is enforced by a couple of the guys that own houses across the street. They often actually have a local parking enforcement officer situated in McCurdy as well. There is no parking at the school this year because the school is undergoing renovations. Last year, you were able to park for a flat rate for the day. So the second choice for parking if McCurdy is full is to pay for parking on the side of the street along Moore Street in designated areas, and you will see them pretty clearly outlined. You can park at the arena, which is on the other side of town, which sounds like it's really far, but it's really only, I don't know, 3 blocks away. So the arena, my understanding is that it's free to park there. And you can also park at the Rotary Club. That is the addition for this year. Now, last year there was a Lions Head Transit Authority bus that was going through town and would pick you up at the arena and drop you off at the trailhead. That is not happening this year. So, you know, for those of us visiting Lions Head and parking, we're just going to be that much more fit as a result. There is an RFP out by town council to replace that service, primarily serving hikers that were parking, you know, further away, but, you know, great to hop aboard if it was there when you parked at the arena and wanted to walk in. There is another change. Sorry, Casey, I'm kind of just taking over here. There is another change with regards to Lions Head in terms of McKay's Harbor. So not everyone refers to it as McKay's Harbor, but McKay's Harbor is actually the camping area on the Bruce Trail that is right at the, I guess, northeastern point of the park. There's a little harbor along a rocky beach where many Bruce Trail hikers would go and stay overnight and could camp within the park on their journey, you know, through the Bruce Trail. Unfortunately, that has been closed down. So that actually served as an overflow area for some climbers over the years who couldn't find, you know, a place to stay or a camping spot in Lions Head. So unfortunately, that's closed down. So kind of a bummer, but has been closed indefinitely by the park. So that's the last update pertaining to Lions Head.
Can I also just say, like, there is no need to be concerned with the hike into Lions Head. Having gone to Red Rocks now, where the hike is literally uphill both ways, there's no reason to complain about a 45-minute totally flat hike into Lions Head. Oh man, that was rough. That was a rough trip for me. I do not like hiking. Okay, well, thanks for that, Mike. Thanks for all the updates there. We will move on to Landon's Bay, which is a very small area, but you know, maybe of creeping interest for some. Rock climbing prohibitive signs have been posted at the cliff. There are only a few bolted lines there, I think. But Connor McCarthy, who is our access liaison from the ACC, is going to be attempting to open discussions with Parks Canada regarding ice climbing there, and potentially that could, you know, lead into some discussions about rock climbing. But for now, you know, there's no access guideline, and there are some concerns with regard to the historical value of the cliff, and so at this time there is no climbing there. So Connor from the ACC will be taking on a role to attempt to open discussions there regarding ice climbing, which is generally a little bit lower impact than rock climbing. Okay, so the last thing we'll say is this is our shout out to Brendan Bars. So we don't have a portfolio manager for, you know, within the OAC for the Nooks, but, you know, we know there's been a ton of interest about the Nooks for the Sudbury crew. And we know there's a lot of GTA climbers who have gone up to the Nooks and explored this new area, which I have heard nothing but great things about. Thanks to the new guidebook by Brendan Bars. So there's been a ton of visitation, but I know that Brennan and the crew up north have seen some concerning issues regarding access up there. So we wanted to remind people, even though this is not necessarily something that we kind of have, a portfolio manager for. We just wanted to reiterate what we saw Brendan had conveyed about the area and just say, like, please remember, if you're going up there, like, yes, it's in the wild, and yes, it's, Crown land. There are not the same access concerns that, the Southern Ontario kind of suffers from when it comes to some of these private landowner situations. But it is just as important to keep in mind leave no trace principles and remember that, like, you're not the only person visiting there. So every person visiting does have an impact, and we need to be mindful of that when we're visiting. So a couple key things: no camping on the main trail or near the main trail. So if you're going to camp there, like, this is some, backcountry fun you can have, like, get away from the main trail. It's really not ideal to have climbers like hanging out on the main trail and being easily visible to everyone who's kind of passing by. Like, let's keep the place, feeling a little more wild as it should be. And also no camping in the parking area or near the parking area. Like, if you're going to camp, that's cool, but you need to kind of go for a little hike. Like, this is some backcountry fun. And you need to get away from the idea of parking anywhere that's like easily visible. So, really try to stay off the path when it comes to camping. And also don't create any new trails or brush. Like, Brendan and his crew have been up there. They've cleared what needs to be cleared for access to boulders and keeping as little trace as possible in this wild space. Like, nobody needs to be moving anything around. So please, like, just leave it as untouched as possible. Like, it's amazing to be able to enjoy this wild space. Like, let's try and keep it as wild as we can. And I will defer to Brendan for any other information. I know Brendan keeps some updates on his Instagram profile. So I would give him a follow if you can, and just kind of stay up to date there if you're interested in the nooks. But I think that's it. So if anyone has any final questions, we'll just give it a couple minutes. Oh, Janie asked about halfway log dump. Jess, can you kind of weigh in on halfway log dump?
Yeah, so my understanding, so they've been kind of unresponsive and they don't really have a dedicated person for working with us right now. I also haven't had the bandwidth this year to try to be proactive and push on that. Our halfway log dump host program is on pause, and I don't know if we're going to be able to get that back, just because they have changed how they do parking, et cetera, up there. So we don't know that we can offer our hosts the benefits, which was free camping and free parking. My understanding is that bouldering itself is still permitted there, although the boulders are under a lot of high water this year. As the cycles of tides go every few years, you get like high tide years and low tide years. And right now we're kind of seeing, just like last year, a lot of water up there. So the same areas that you have been permitted to boulder are still supposed to be open for bouldering. It's just we're not running the host program at the moment.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you. Yeah, I think that's a challenge for sure. The water level has always been an issue. I mean, in the last few years at halfway. So, but as far as we know, you're still able to climb up there. There's been no change to the access status at all that we've been informed of. So still welcome to go there if you have a floating crash pad. All right. Well, I think that's everything. I don't see any other questions coming through, but again, I just wanted to thank everyone for joining and taking this time out of your evening to pop in and get some updates from us. Again, if you have any other questions, please write us at our info@ inbox. We always try to tackle those questions as quickly as we can. But aside from that, have a great season and enjoy your rock climbing. All right, we'll leave it at that. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.